The sound of her laugh stopped me dead in the doorway. It was a sound I hadn't heard in years, light, fluty, unself-consciously bright. My hands tightened around the tray of bruschetta. I followed the sound across our new dining room through the archway into the kitchen. And there he was, Bryce, leaning against my granite island as if he owned it, a bottle of craft IPA in his hand. Stacy was facing him, her back to me, one hand on her collarbone, that laugh still hanging in the air. My mother-in-law Carol stood beside him, a martini glass in one hand, the other poised on his forearm. Her eyes found mine over Stacy's shoulder. They didn't widen in surprise, they gleamed with victory. "Lawson, there you are, look who I found. Bryce is back in town. I just knew he had to see the new place. Doesn't he just complete the family?" The heat that shot through me was pure, undiluted betrayal. This was a calculated strike, and my wife had let it happen. The next 10 minutes were a blur of acid politeness. Bryce offered a handshake, his grip perfectly firm, his smile professionally sympathetic. "Great space you've got here, Lawson. Carol's been telling me all about the journey." His eyes swept the open concept, pausing on the built-in shelves I'd spent a weekend painstakingly installing. "Bold choice with the floating shelves. Hope you used a stud finder." A chuckle. Stacy flicked a glance at me, a faint crease between her brows. "Lawson's very handy," she said, but it sounded like an apology. Bryce nodded, taking a slow sip of his beer. "I'd have gone with a more substantial bracket system, for resale value." Every word was a paper cut, a subtle diminishment disguised as friendly advice. I was the amateur, he was the connoisseur, in my own goddamn house. Dinner was a special kind of torture. Carol had commandeered the head of the table. "Stacy, you sit there next to Bryce, for old time's sake," she winked. A physical nausea rolled through me. Stacy hesitated, her eyes pleading with me silently, but she sat. I took the other end, a mile away. Vanessa, Stacy's sister, leaned in. "So Bryce, tell us about the Monaco trip. The pictures online were insane." Bryce launched into a story about yacht parties and lost bets, his voice a confident drone. "I ate my chicken piccata. It tasted like ash." Carol's voice pierced through. "A toast to new beginnings in beautiful homes and to old, enduring bonds that truly stand the test of time." Her glass tilted toward Bryce and Stacy. I didn't raise mine. I volunteered to clear the plates. In the hallway, pressing against the cool wall, I tried to breathe. Their voices carried from the dining room. Vanessa's whisper was meant to be heard. "He just has a presence, doesn't he? It's like the room recalibrates. Remember his penthouse, the view of the bridge?" A beat of silence. Then Stacy's voice, softer, unsure. "It was a great view." Something in me fractured. It wasn't the nostalgia. It was the weakness in her tone, the permission she gave them. I wasn't being attacked by a rival. I was being erased by a consensus. My role as the husband, the provider, the man of this house, was being voted out in my own dining room. The anger crystallized into something colder, sharper. A plan. The goodbye was prolonged. Bryce lingered by the door, his hand on Stacy's shoulder. "You look incredible, Stace. This life really agrees with you." His eyes slid past her to me. "Take good care of her, Lawson." The condescension was a velvet glove. Carol kissed his cheek. "Don't be a stranger, darling." The door finally closed. The silence was louder than the party. Stacy turned to me, her arms crossed. "Lawson, I can explain." "Explain what?" My voice was terrifyingly calm. "That your ex-fiancé, the one who left you for a junior associate, just spent the night evaluating my property value and touching my wife." She flinched. "Mom sprung it on me. What was I supposed to do?" "Say no," I said, and walked upstairs. The seed was now a rooted thing. This would not stand. The morning after was a landscape of cold sunshine and colder silence. Stacy stood at the coffee maker, her posture defensive. "I'm sorry," she said, not looking at me. "It was awkward for me too." "Was it?" I asked, pouring my own coffee. "You laughed." She finally looked at me, exasperated. "What? I'm not allowed to laugh. He was telling a story. Mom put me in a terrible position. You know how she gets." I did know. That was the problem. Carol's weapon was Stacy's deep, unshakable need for her approval. My love was a choice. Her mother's love was a condition. She used our home, our milestone, to humiliate me and reel him back in. And you let her. The word "let" hung in the air. She had no rebuttal. The crack between us was no longer invisible. I became a student of my own life. I observed. At work, I was a high school history teacher. I graded papers with a new detachment. My real focus was elsewhere. A former student, Mia, was now a junior analyst. Her father, Paul, worked in private equity. I reached out for career advice, bought him a coffee. I asked intelligent questions about market volatility. Casually, I mentioned a fund manager named Bryce whose name I'd heard around. Paul's lip curled. Bryce Winters. Smart but all leverage. He's riding one fund that's packed with overvalued green tech, a house of cards. He didn't know he'd handed me a blueprint. I thanked him. The first piece was in place. My friend Ben ran a boutique tech incubator. He invited me to a boring networking thing. I wore my one good suit. I didn't schmooze. I listened. I found myself next to a man named Arjun discussing the failure of digital education platforms to engage. I talked about narrative, about building context, about making students care before making them memorize. 20 minutes later, he handed me a card. He was a venture capitalist looking for a head of narrative for a new ed-tech startup. "You have a compelling perspective," he said. "We should talk." It wasn't luck. It was preparation meeting a moment I'd positioned myself for. I called him the next day. Sunday dinner at Carol. The air was thick with unspoken judgment. So, Carol began carving the roast beef like a surgeon. "Vanessa saw Bryce at the club. He asked about you, Stacy. Specifically, he's still single, you know." She said it to the roast as if sharing a fascinating tidbit. Vanessa nodded. "Seems like he's realized what he lost." They spoke as if I were a ghost. Stacy pushed her peas around. "I'm married, Mom." "Of course you are, sweetheart," Carol said, her tone dripping with maternal patience. "We're just talking about an old friend's circumstances. Lawson understands." She looked at me. "You're not the jealous type, are you?" I smiled. It felt foreign on my face. "Not at all. Confidence is quiet, don't you think?" The table went still for a second. I met with Arjun and his partners. I presented not as a teacher, but as a communicator who understood systems, motivation, and story. They offered me the role. The salary was more than double my teaching income. The bonus structure was serious. I signed the contract. On the way home, I drove to a new bank branch. I opened a savings account in my name only. The first direct deposit would go there. This wasn't about hiding money. It was about building a foundation no one could undermine. It was about options. I parked in my driveway, looking at the house that was supposed to be a dream. It was now a battlefield, and I had just secured better weapons. The change in me was subtle but seismic. I started wearing my tailored suits to work at the school. I came home later energized with a calm, focused aura. Stacy noticed. "You're different," she said one evening, suspicious. "Is everything okay at school?" "Everything's fine," I said, smiling. Carol noticed too during a brief visit. "My, don't we look important? Midlife crisis starts early, huh, Lawson?" I just laughed, a genuine, easy sound that confused her. "Just investing in myself, Carol. You're right, presentation matters." I agreed with her, disarming her. She couldn't critique what she'd ostensibly advocated for. My confidence was a wall her barbs couldn't pierce. After my third major presentation at the startup, Arjun called me into his office. "The board loves the direction. We want you full-time, executive VP of outreach, sign-on bonus, equity." The number he mentioned made my heart stutter. That night I sat Stacy down. "I've taken a new job. I'm leaving teaching." I laid out the offer sheet. Her eyes scanned the page, widening. This is real." "It is." "Why didn't you tell me you were looking?" "Because I wasn't," I said honestly. "The opportunity found me because I was ready for it." The unspoken words hung there. Unlike Bryce, my success isn't leveraged. It's built on substance. The news trickled through Carol's grapevine. Her response was a phone call to Stacy I accidentally picked up. "A startup, how quaint and volatile. Bryce says the tech sector is looking at a correction." 2 days later, Bryce himself called me. "Lawson, Bryce Winters, heard about your move. Congrats. Those startup contracts can be minefields. Lots of fine print on that equity. I'd be happy to look it over for you. As a favor." The patronizing offer was a classic power move. Establish himself as the expert, the protector. He expected gratitude or defensive pride. He got neither. "That's generous of you, Bryce," I said, my voice even. "I appreciate the thought, but the firm uses Hartman and Leeds for their legal. I'm sure you're familiar with them." The silence on the other end was delicious. Hartman and Leeds was a white-shoe firm that represented Fortune 500 companies. They didn't look over contracts. They drafted the laws that governed them. Yes, of course," he said, his voice losing its smooth oiliness. "Well, if they're involved, I'm sure it's solid." "I'm sure it is," I agreed. "Thanks for checking in." I hung up. The balance of power had just shifted. He knew I was not in his world. I was in an adjacent, more credible one. A week later, over a tense family lunch, Carol tried to regain ground. "Bryce was only trying to help Lawson. No need to be defensive about your little career change." Stacy put down her fork. "Mom, it's not a little career change. It's a major executive role. He's doubling our income." She said it flatly, a statement of fact. Carol blinked, thrown by Stacy's direct defense. It was the first time Stacy hadn't downplayed my achievements in front of them. "Well, money isn't everything," Carol sniffed. "Security is. Let's see if it lasts." But the jab fell flat. The crack in their unified front was now a visible fissure. Stacy was starting to see the game. The financial news notification popped up on my phone a month later. "Regulatory scrutiny halts trading of Verdex Growth Fund. Investors nervous." I clicked. Bryce's flagship fund was named. The article cited overconcentration in inflated assets and liquidity concerns. The house of cards was trembling. I didn't show Stacy. I let Carol deliver the news, her voice strained on a speakerphone call. "Poor Bryce is under such stress. The market is so unfair to true innovators." Her narrative was already fighting reality. "Is he okay?" Stacy asked, concern in her voice. My silence was a loud answer. The innovator was exposed as a gambler. Carol's desperation became palpable. She organized a family weekend at a luxury resort. "Bryce needs to unwind. He's joining us. It'll be just like old times, Stacy." This was her big play: remove Stacy from my influence, re-immerse her in the old dynamic. Stacy held the phone, looking at me. I said nothing. I simply looked back, my expression neutral. She took a breath. "I can't go, Mom. Lawson has a major product launch that weekend. I need to be here for him." The lie was telling. She was choosing my side and inventing a reason to do so. Carol sputtered. The cord was fraying. I was in my home office when I heard Carol's car pull up unexpectedly. I didn't announce myself. From the top of the stairs, I heard her and Vanessa in the foyer. "He's gotten into her head," Carol hissed. "This job, this attitude, it's a phase. Bryce is a scrapper. He'll recover from this. Our job is to keep Stacy close until he does, remind her of what real stability looks like." Vanessa's reply was worried. "What if she's happy, Mom? Lawson seems solid now." "Solid is boring." Carol snapped. "Bryce has vision. Once he's back on top, she'll see." I retreated silently. Their plan wasn't about love. It was about reinstalling their chosen symbol of status. My revenge needed a human heart. Stacy's younger brother, Kyle, was it. A talented graphic artist dismissed by Carol as a dreamer. He was the family's invisible member. I had him design some presentation assets for the startup. He was brilliant. I introduced him to our head of design. When a prestigious, fully funded fellowship at a renowned studio came across my desk, I advocated for Kyle. I helped him polish his portfolio. He got it. The news was a shockwave. At a casual dinner, Kyle, his eyes bright, raised a glass to me. To Lawson, for actually seeing me. Carol's smile was frozen. Her neglected son was succeeding because of the man she despised. Kyle became my silent sentinel. One evening he texted me. "Heard Mom and Vanessa planning an intervention dinner for Stacy. Theme, settling for less. Be ready." Later he shared the deeper truth. Over beers, he said, "You know why Stacy quit her gallery job?" I shook my head. "Mom told her it was a dead end, that she wasn't talented enough. She offered to support her if she took a stable admin job. She made Stacy dependent. Bryce was part of the upgrade plan." The final piece clicked. This wasn't just about me. It was about controlling Stacy's entire life narrative. My fight was for her liberation, too. The intervention dinner was at Carol. The atmosphere was charged. Carol began her sermon. Sometimes we make choices from a place of limited options, and when better options reemerge, it's brave to reconsider. Bryce, looking thinner, nodded sagely. Kyle cleared his throat. Speaking of options, he said loud and clear. I got the Anderson Studio Fellowship, full ride. Lawson made the introduction and mentored me. He looked at Carol. You know, the career path you said was practical. Then he turned to Stacy. And sis, Mom told you fail at the gallery. She had Aunt Vanessa call the director and imply you were unreliable. You didn't quit. You were sabotaged. The table erupted. Chaos, Carol screaming denials, Vanessa pale and sputtering. Stacy stared at Kyle, then at her mother, her face crumbling with the shock of betrayal. And Bryce, drunk on stress and expensive scotch, saw his opening to perform. He slammed a hand on the table. This is what happens, petty drama. You people are obsessed with scraps while real men build empires. He pointed a shaking finger at me. And you think your little narrative job matters. It's a charity project for failed teachers playing dress-up. The ugliness was raw, unfiltered. The polished hedge fund prince was gone, replaced by a bitter, drowning man. Stacy looked at him, really looked, and I saw the final idol shatter. In the car home, Stacy was silent, shaking. When we walked into our house, she didn't go upstairs. She sat on the couch, staring at the shelves Bryce had insulted. It was all a lie, she whispered. My career, my choices, my marriage in their eyes. I sat beside her, not touching her. The question, I said softly, is what do you want, not Carol, not Bryce, you, she cried for an hour. Then she wiped her face. The next day she called her mother. Her voice, for the first time, held no tremor. You have a choice. You apologize to Lawson, you respect our marriage, and you get therapy for your manipulation. Or you lose me, for good. Carol chose pride. The cord was cut. We sold the house. The hot market Carol loved worked in our favor. We split the profit. I bought a sleek modern loft in a converted warehouse downtown, all exposed brick and light, a testament to my new life. Stacy rented a bright apartment near a community arts center where she started volunteering. Our separation was calm, almost melancholic. We attended counseling, not to salvage the marriage, but to understand how we'd let it be invaded. The ultimate revenge was my peace. I was successful, respected, and free from their toxic gravity. Stacy was finding her own strength, separate from me but crucially separate from them. 1 year later, sunlight streams into my loft, illuminating my desk where I'm reviewing a global launch strategy. My phone rings. It's Carol. Her voice is aged, brittle. Lawson, it's been a year. Bryce is well, he's finished, lost everything. I thought perhaps you and Stacy. She was trying to broker a reconciliation now that her champion had fallen. I listened patiently. I let her finish. I looked out at my city view, earned through my own mind and resolve. I'm sorry, Carol, I said, my voice steady, final. That chapter is closed. I have a meeting to get to. I hung up. There was no anger, no gloating, just quiet closure. I had built a life so solid, so authentically mine, that their drama was now just a faint, fading echo. The victory was absolute.